Jamaican beef patties are extremely delicious. Flaky, crispy, and loaded up with a spicy minced beef filling that's so much water and liquid. Very few snacks beat a piping hot beef patty with cheese from your favorite patty shop. Only one problem. Getting the same results at home for most people is hard or impossible, especially the crust. So let's change that. I've spent months working on this recipe just to show you how to get beef patty that's even better than anything you will ever buy. With just a few tips and techniques, you'll be able to make Jamaica's most favorite street food in the comfort of your own home, and you don't have to compromise on the taste or texture. Hey, and thanks a lot for 6K subs. It's the biggest encouragement to keep on putting out quality content. Make we jump right in and start with the filling. Beef patty filling has to have a good depth of flavor with a spicy kick, and of course, it has to be juicy. I'm going to show you how to achieve all of this fairly easy. First thing I'm going to do is brown the minced beef. I'm adding a generous splash of oil to the pan and I'm allowing it to get hot. Then I'm going to add about a pound of lean ground beef. Lean ground beef is way less fatty, so managing the grease in this recipe is much easier. Too much grease will make soggy patties. You might be wondering why I'm starting with the beef instead of like the onions or scallion. I'm sauteing the beef first to get rid of some of the oil and excess moisture, and I'm also lessening the cooking time for the beef, which will give me a tender mince. I'm not trying to overcook the beef here. As soon as the color changes from red to grey, it should be good. Juicy. That's what we want. It's done now, so I can turn off the heat. I'm transferring the mince back into the bowl. It's okay because this isn't done cooking yet, so we don't have to worry about raw meat making us sick. And I will try to avoid getting the extra grease from the pot into the bowl. We're going to saute the seasoning, so place the pot back on the stove. Add another splash of oil. This is roughly 2 teaspoons of a good quality curry. It's mostly for flavor and not color. Next, 2 tablespoons chopped garlic. This will add a lot of depth of flavor. 3 tablespoons chopped onions. And we want to keep them moving so it doesn't burn. That curry powder would absorb a lot of the oil, so hit it with another splash of oil so it doesn't burn and we get a good saute. Next, add about 2 tablespoons of chopped scallion, a tablespoon of chopped scotch bonnet pepper, and a teaspoon of ground pimento or allspice. This is the flavor base for great patty filling, spicy and flavorful. Saute everything properly. Might need a bit more oil so it doesn't burn. I'm going to add back the minced beef to this, but before that I'm adding about 3 tablespoons of chopped green pepper. I like to add sweet pepper later in a saute because its high water content sometimes takes away from the flavor. Next, add the minced beef and the juices that it released while it was resting. Mix to combine everything, and yeah, those sauteed seasonings really are starting to flavor the minced beef. Next, add a pinch of salt and a pinch of brown sugar to mellow out the filling. Be conservative with the salt because the next ingredient is actually really salty. Add 1/4 cup of soy sauce. That filling is really coming together. Next, add a cup of panade. You might be asking what's panade? It's simply a starchy paste made from bread and a liquid like stock or water. In this case, it's water. I'm just going to break up a couple slices of bread and throw them in the blender. And I will add just enough water to blend the paste. A panade helps to keep the mince juicy. It acts as a kind of emulsifier that prevents the grease from leaking out of the mince. It also stops the meat from getting too tough. Don't skip this whenever you make your filling because it makes a world of difference and it's really simple. Okay, so a cup of panade goes in. Just notice all the oil emulsifying. That's juicy. Give it a taste test to see if anything needs adjusting. That's perfect. Next, I'm going to roughly blend the filling. An Immersion Blender is perfect for this, but a regular blender or food processor works just fine too. It's just a bit more cleanup. I still want a bit of texture to this, so I won't blend it too much. That texture is perfect. You might notice deeper flavors after blending because the meat and seasoning are broken down and recombined. That's done, so we'll set it aside to cool. And now it's time to work on the dough. Alright, so this is a part of the patty that's hard to get just right, but don't worry, I'll walk you through it. For the crust, we need beef suet. Suet is found around the kidneys and other organs in cattle. It has a high melting point, so it's rock solid at room temperature. You can get beef suet from your local butcher and easily render it down over low heat and strain it to get these blocks. For patty crust dough, the total fat you add should be 50% of the flour. My recipe calls for a pound of flour, so I'm going to weigh out half pound of the beef suet. Next, I'm going to shred the beef suet with my grater. Suet has a subtle, sweet, buttery flavor, and that gives the crust a distinct taste and texture. If you don't have beef suet, you could substitute with butter or other solid fats at a 1-to-1 ratio. Butter has a much lower melting point though, so you would have to be more strict with temperature control if you want flaky pastry. Shredding the suet makes handling and incorporating it into the dough much easier. Next, I'm going to separate the shredded suet into 2 equal portions. The shredded suet heats up a lot faster, so you want to work quickly. The first portion goes in the fridge right away. Soft suet can be a pain to handle, so working quickly and keeping everything cool helps a lot. Alright, that's done. Second bowl will also go into the fridge. Next, grab a bowl because we are ready to finally make the dough. The color is also a big thing for me, so I will detail that as well. The flakiness of patty crust adds so much to the experience of eating a patty. It's a perfect contrast to the spicy, juicy filling on the inside. So in the bowl, add 1 pound of all-purpose flour. Next, I'm adding about 2 tablespoons of egg powder. This is simply powdered yellow-orange coloring. You might come across recipes that call for curry or turmeric, but I've tested them all and curry and turmeric does not complement the subtle beef flavor from the suet in the crust. Egg powder is flavorless, so it doesn't clash with anything. Go ahead and sprinkle that in. Next, add the first half of the beef suet from the fridge. It should be firm again. I'm going to be using ice cold water to mix the dough, but before that, I'm going to mix and combine all the dry ingredients so everything can be distributed evenly and the flour coats the shreds of beef suet. A little at a time, add the ice cold water and continue to mix. Slowly add ice water and knead until the dough comes together. Be careful not to knead too much. Just knead enough until the dough comes together and the flour is hydrated. And it's okay if the dough is a little bit tacky because we will be using a decent amount of flour in the rolling process. That's a beautiful, vibrant color. This is actually one of the very few times I use food coloring in the food that I cook. Okay, so let's roll this out. What I'm going to do now is layer the next half of the beef suet with the dough. We really need to flour the work surface and the dough so it doesn't stick. Flour the rolling pin as well. I'm going to layer the beef suet, but first I'm going to shape the dough into a rectangle. You can do this by rolling out and making some strategic folds. Fold in half first. Roll it out a bit more. Then fold over the irregular end so the sides are squared off. Then turn over with a seam side down, with the seam side down, smooth side up. Now we have a rough rectangle. So we can go ahead and roll it out. This dough is really pliable and doesn't snap back, so it's easy to handle. Grab the second half of the beef suet and go ahead and place some evenly in the middle third of the rectangle. Next, fold over the bottom third over the middle third with the beef suet. And be sure to keep the surfaces floured up to reduce any kind of sticking. Next, I'm going to add some beef suet to the folded over end. So now, the next step is to fold over the top third over the beef suet. Flip and then roll out to a rectangle similar to the one we started with. This process is called lamination. This is how we get the crust to be flaky. We will repeat these steps until the beef suet is done. The layers of fat and dough is what will create that flakiness. Butter or a combination of butter and beef suet or other fats can also be used. It's important to keep them cold though. Beef suet works really well because of its flavor profile and its high melting point, so it's more forgiving. Butter has a lower melting point, so if you're using butter, you have to keep everything extra cold. You might have to put the butter and the dough in the freezer a couple times to drop the temperature during the rolling process. I'm almost done with lamination. I'm trying to work quickly so the dough doesn't warm up too much. I only have a little bit of beef suet left that I will fold in the same way as before. And you might notice that it's getting kinda soft. You might also notice that I did not add any salt. I forgot it, but it doesn't make a big difference. The crust without salt actually complements its spicy, flavorful minced beef really well. Kinda like how a bland white rice works really well with curry. What does make a difference though is a pinch of sugar, so when you're giving this one a try, sprinkle in a little bit. After you're done with lamination, any additional folds and rolls you do will double the layer of fat and dough and make the final product more flaky. For this reason, I always roll the dough out and fold it at least 3 times. It's important to remember that if the dough warms up too much, the fat will dissolve into the flour and we won't get flakiness. Just a greasy mess, so keep it cold. We can go ahead and wrap that up in some plastic wrap and this will chill in the fridge for about 45 minutes. Alright, so some of the tools and equipment I use are linked in the description. I do get a small percentage of sales made, so it's a nice way to support the channel at no extra cost to you. Great, so let's make some really tasty beef patties. I get the dough out of the fridge, unwrap it and flour it up nicely. Now just roll it out. This is a bit too big, so I'm going to divide in half. Place that half in the fridge to keep it chilled, then roll out the other half. I'm going to fill these, but the technique that I will use is closer to what is used in a commercial kitchen because you can make a lot of patties really fast, especially if I have a pastry cutter or ravioli cutter. I want to roll this out to about 3 millimeters thick. Next, add the now completely cooled filling. I'm using a 1/3 cup measure to keep the size consistent. When placing the filling on the dough, avoid the edges. Next, fold the dough over the filling while ensuring nothing touches the edges. Pat out any extra air and then use a ravioli cutter to cut out the patties. There's a link in the description so you can purchase one of these. They come in handy when making a variety of baked goods and of course ravioli. I want to cut out kind of rounded rectangles instead of semicircles. This is how commercial kitchen does it, and this is probably the patty shape that's most recognizable to you. Alternatively, you could use like a bowl to cut out circles, place the filling in the middle, fold it over and seal the edges with a fork. We will have a bit of extra trimmings though, but those are still good. All you have to do is ball up everything and roll it out to still get flaky crust, so save those trimmings. Almost time to bake, so I'm gonna grab my non-stick pizza pan and get it greased up. You can use a regular baking tray with grease paper, it won't be a problem. This pizza pan is just super convenient for me. Go ahead and place on each patty. Okay, so let's do 2 more patties. Grab the other half of the dough from the fridge and roll it out. Commercial kitchens use this technique because it's really quick. I'm not making large batches, but I still like this method. If I had a big enough work surface, I could make a dozen patty in one go. You could even make them, freeze them, and whenever you want patty, it's straight from the freezer to the oven. Next 2 patties, I'm adding cheese for a classic cheese patty. These are my favorite. It's usually a slice of Tasty's cheese like I have here, but if you have a favorite cheese, go right ahead. I really like gatekeeping. As far back as I can remember, I was eating patties. This was my lunch a lot of times in school, and even now whenever I go into town, especially on a market day, I have to grab a juicy patty and a box of orange juice. Most people love patty and cocoa bread, but it's too much for me, so it's one or the other. I have a cocoa bread video, so if you want to make the combo yourself, check that out after you're done with this. And that's it. Those are some really sexy patties. I could quit my job and start a patty shop. At this point you could freeze them to bake another time, but I'm hungry right now. Get those on the pizza pan, and at this point your oven should have already been preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. If you're taking these out of the freezer frozen, 300 degrees would work better. And into the preheated oven they go. A solid 25 minutes is enough to bake them. You mostly want to crisp up the crust and maybe a little browning. These are ready. Notice that they puffed up a bit. They are steaming on the inside. And there you have it. Tasty, juicy, golden crust Jamaican beef patty. Not even mothers. It looks great, the smell is great. Most Jamaicans know that distinctive patty shop smell. It's a hit of nostalgia. Look at that crust. You can tell that I couldn't help scoffing down one of them before recording the video. Patty is not patty if the crumbs are stressed out, and this has got enough stress. So let's take a bite and see the results. These are still hot, but that's the one and only way to eat patty. I really love that texture. The transition from flaky and crispy to a soft chewy layer, then that delicious filling. You ever get burned from patty filling? Anyways, thanks again squad for 6k sub. I really love making content like this, and I hope everyone who was waiting on this video is satisfied.